that was the deal. And I remember the second Armory car, there are people cheering for the Mystery Man, you know, and they actually get more cheers, and that's because you had half the crowd pretty much in there. You remember that?
Yeah, oh yeah, we definitely had supporters. I even had my little brother and my cousins dressed up in the war paint, and yeah, we were bad guys, but we were still loved at the same time.
His little brother, Joe, right?
Yeah, Joe wrestled.
He actually wrestled on our car, and I think it was almost like a last week decision.
Right, we were just gonna throw him in because someone needed a match, and he had played around with us a little bit.
And he did good. I remember for being the first time, he did really good. That was a lot of good moves in that match.
We were always wondering what he was gonna be, what he wanted. He went from he was gonna be the pizza man, and he'd come out with a pizza, and then he says, "No, I don't want to do that." And then we finally agreed on the Disco Kid, remember? And he come up with some disco music.
Actually, Disco Joe. And then
is that all right? All right, right. And that was so perfect for him, because it really. That's outside the ring, he was anything but that. But inside the ring, he got to be Disco Kid, Disco Joe. It was great for him. He still talks about it today. Whenever we kid around a little bit, sometimes I'll say, "Hey, Disco," and bring back the old wrestling memories.
Yeah, but these guys were really, they caught on, like I said earlier, they caught on pretty quick. I mean, it didn't take much to show. I had to show them a few things in the ring, but went over how to do a few of the moves. But for the most part, you guys had your own idea of what you wanted to do, what you wanted to be.
Well, we've been doing it in the backyard for years, you know. We've been doing it with our buddies on mattresses for years before that. And we were big fans, you know, big wrestling fans. So we knew what we were doing a little bit, you know, going into it. We had our own ideas of what we wanted to do. We had fun. We had a lot of fun.
They did pretty good. And I think, you know, when Ryan came, Ryan?
Yeah, he had a little muscle on him.
Yeah, he actually kind of looked the part a little
bit.
But he was good. I mean, he was like another natural.
He was an athlete, yeah.
You could see that. And he did pretty good. I always, a real easy guy to get along with, too. You know, he kind of had a mean look to him, but nothing like that, you know, behind the scenes.
He's now a professional musician, a guitarist in Seattle, doing his thing there. I ran into him about 3-4 years ago at the mall Christmas shopping, and in fact he brought up the wrestling days. He says, you know, have you seen anybody or seen any of the old tapes, because he sure liked one. And I said, no, you know, and that was before I got to hook up with you again. And I said, no, we haven't heard anything, but it sure would be fun, wouldn't it? And I haven't seen him since. If I see him again now, I'll have a tape for him.
Oh, you have more than a tape.
Well, good.
I've got everything that you guys did at the dry dock, all of that stuff, and I got that second Armory card. I don't got the first one though. That's the only thing I don't have. I've been trying to find somebody that I know that somebody might have it out there, but that maybe copied it when it was aired,
right,
or recorded it. But
well, I think it's fantastic the way you've kept everything organized and keeping our memories still. Intact, so that we can go get them again.
Trying to get the website all put together so everything's on there, on our NWF website.
I visited that for the first time last week, and I loved it. And I got to see me up there. And
well, there'll be a whole profile eventually. But
it's a lot of work. You're doing a good job.
Yeah, that's just it this time. I was busy with getting the Armory cards on DVD. That's now done. I should have those within about a week. But then now I can put some time into that website again. And
do you consider doing anything with wrestling anymore?
I don't know. You know, I get people ask that to me, and deep down I probably would like to.
Right.
But the reality is it would be real difficult to do it. Now, I don't mean physically, but it would be difficult to get. If I did it again, I'd want to do it with everybody again that we did it with.
Yeah.
Not some other thing. I'd want to have the same guys again.
Sure.
And that would be hard with some people to get everybody with their schedules to commit to a night. But you don't know how many times other guys have asked me
sure.
that have been in the show that they really would like to get in there again.
How about any other realm of wrestling besides the old guys?
Oh, what I do with the new stuff?
Or would you say, you know, manage or promote it? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I worked with Eddie. I got such a sour taste from Eddie Sharkey. when he kind of screwed me over, and I seen how the real business works. Yeah, and I just, at that point, had enough of it. I just
It
wanted to
wasn't
get
fun anymore.
No, the fun was with us.
Right.
When we went and did that, when I was working with Eddie doing the real independent things, the wrestling was fun, but the politics was bullshit.
Right. A lot of work.
You know, it was just a bunch of bullshit. Is the best word to use, and a lot of egos. Everybody wants to be number one, and not everybody can be number one. And what we did so good with what we were doing is we all worked together, with the exception of Tim Holland and a few other people.
Yeah, back in that one horrible experience.
And it's just a shame you guys didn't get out there a little bit earlier.
Our hearts were in the right place. We were just a step or two late.
Because, you know, and what really bugs me about that, yeah, it's a little embarrassing because it didn't go the way it was supposed to for me, but more than that, it looked bad. It just didn't look like it was going the way it was supposed to, and the people were probably watching it were probably thinking, what's going on here? Where's this going?
But at the same time, you were showing so much heart staying in that ring that it was fun to watch as a spectator. You know, it wasn't, I think you might be a little hard on yourself about it because, you know, you were truly hanging on for dear life a lot of them times, and so you didn't have to fake it. It was for real.
Yeah, it was, you know, 3 guys, 3-on-1. It's kind of hard to deal with. And they weren't really hurting me, but they were keeping me from winning.
Right.
They were not going out. They were hitting a little hard. Pain never really bothered me, though. It was more the fact that I couldn't do what I was supposed to do. And so I was aggravated in the ring.
Oh, sure.
I was mad because this isn't going the way it's supposed to. You know, we're in an armory card, and the cameras are rolling, and videos, and I'm thinking, God, I wonder what the guys in the back are thinking, because they're in the monitors back there, and probably thinking, I wonder what is going on back there. And it actually worked out good, because by the time I got thrown out, when I actually did decide to go out, the mystery man grabbed me, Leslie, and pulled me off to make it look like he interfered. And that gave it some justice, you know? And I think he did that just to make it look like I'm just not leaving the Battle Royal. And I always, you know, appreciated that he did that, because otherwise it is kind of, I was pissed. I was extremely pissed at the end of that Battle Royal.
Well, you work so hard on putting the whole thing together, and then everything's going good until that, and yeah. But work, you did plenty of it, and we appreciate it, all of us. Even if the rest of the guys haven't said it to you, boy, I know we do anyway.
Oh, yeah, you know, and I that's the whole reason I'm even interested anymore, is because I do appreciate the fact that people remember, and it was just a lot of fun. If I could go back to that time again, I'd do it, and I wouldn't change much. There's a few things I'd do differently, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change anything. We had too much fun with it, and, you know, I think the only thing I might have changed is when Steve Engstrom joined, I would have said, took the denial stamp and denied. Next person. Because nothing really good came from him in the end, and he's the only guy that I just don't like. Steve Engstrom and Larry. Larry didn't, I don't know. He's all right, but Steve's the one that.
Do you ever talk to those people anymore? You have any correlation with them whatsoever?
I ran into Engstrom with Troy went to some party, and I ran into him somebody's house party in about 1992-ish or so.
Oh, that's a long time ago, yeah.
And he's just, you know, kind of mellowed out with his girlfriend and not really. Steve had always told me how much he appreciated everything I did and this and that, and we know we had our differences, but he really appreciated. I didn't think much of it, though, because what he did with Larry and that and trying to take over the league, that just, he just washed away any friendship we ever had. And I'm pretty forgiving and forgetting, but not with him.
Right.
Nope.
I ran into Dirty Ernie in North Dakota maybe a month and a half ago, and I haven't seen him since those days. And he's still in with the wrestling in a freelance way whenever any promoter, I guess, asks him to do some wrestling. And I seen him there because one of my professional boxers is also a professional wrestler, and I was there watching him. And in fact, one of my tough guys is also a professional wrestler. So they were both on the card, and since I was up in Detroit Lakes, I had to get over to Fargo and see this. And they did wonderful, but he was up there doing something, and and he brought up the night when you got cut when you cut. And he said he never seen anything like that.
Still there.
Oh yeah, it is.
That one stayed with me.
That was,
Yeah, we're trying.
Was a bleeder for sure.
That was the thing, we're starting to get more into the professional wrestling. We're like, well, they call it juicing, That was the term, and they're like, we're gonna juice because then you're gonna have real blood. And so, you use surgical razor blades, which are as sharp as anything. And I just pushed too hard, and the thing opened up like a mouth. And I just remember going into the dressing room, holding my head, and usually you just hold a little bit with pressure and it'll stop. And I look in the mirror and there's this big gash, and it's just blood coming streaming out. I'm like, I went too far here.
I remember you saying in the dressing room, I wanted to make sure it was deep enough. I said, oh boy, did you ever.
And it didn't hurt, but it scared me because it wasn't stopping. And it was just big, and I knew I had cut through layers that I shouldn't have cut through. And it was just a scary thing, and that was the last time I ever did anything like that. That was it. And I remember when Troy and I went to the PWA, I was working with Eddie, we had my last match I ever did was a chain match. And I'd never done one of these. And I wanted to sell this. Troy wanted to juice, and Eddie didn't want to let him because Wally Carbo was in attendance, and he didn't think it'd be good, fairly young man doing this juicing, so he didn't want him to. So I said, well, Troy. And then Troy's concerned that the match is going to go over bad because if you have a chain, somebody should be bleeding. So I said, Troy, there's something we can do in here that will sell it. And put the chain around my neck, throw me against the ropes and pull it back, and I'll just go up and I'll sell this. Like, you're taking my head off with the chain. I never even tried it. I remember Bobby Heenan doing this with a leather strap, and I thought I could do that. So he does this and he pulls it, and I felt it, and I just basically just kind of like do a drop kick and come back, and that crowd, ecstatic. I remember the announcers thinking, "Oh my God, he's going to get killed in here," and it sold it. And so they didn't care there was no blood. Just seeing something like that happen.
All right.
But
I remember my mother was in attendance when you bled, and she, you think Sean's gonna be fine? Is he all right? But she was worried, and she was saying that you guys are never gonna do that, are you? And I says, no, we won't do that for you, Mom.
You know what's funny about that? After it wouldn't stop bleeding, I had my head bandaged up. We knew I had to go to the hospital, so Chris Downs' mom took me down there with his younger brother Jay, and went into the emergency room. We had to wait 3 hours to get in there. Somebody else next to me had been stabbed in the back.
Oh.
He was waiting to get in there. This emergency room was, I don't know why they call it urgent care. It was like people are waiting 3 hours to see doctors from knife wounds and heads bleeding.
Tough night.
It was a busy night apparently. But
must have been a full moon.
But yeah, the thing with the Destructors is I remember when you first came in, we were at the pole barn up there in Dayton doing our TV tapings, and I figured, since they're coming in at first, I'll just do some tag matches. I don't even know who I tagged with. Maybe Jamie. I don't know who it was. But we did some of your first matches with me.
Right.
And Terry Block and some of them guys. And we wanted to sell you guys over, though, because the Barbarians were no longer the Barbarians. We always wanted every promotion's got to have a Road Warrior type team. And it was timing here. So it couldn't have been any better. The Barbarians just split up in October, and so these guys come in and they do their Destructors thing. And they had the music and they had the face paint, and they went over real well.
Bad to the Bone, that was our entrance song. Yep. Bad to the Bone.
And they used it from the very beginning. And when they come in, except that the TV tapings, they didn't have it right yet. And then the interviews, that's the other thing. In their interviews, the Mystery Man had a few things to say, but this guy did he had the gift of gab in those interviews, and he always had something to say, and it came over.
It was my dream. I've always watched those guys do it every Sunday morning on AWA, and I said, it's my turn. I had fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed the stuff that we did. The dry dock stuff was all right, but the new guys, Ernie, and I do respect Ernie. I never had a problem with Ernie. I always liked Jeff Dinsmore. But those guys kind of just went a different direction than what we were kind of doing. And it just wasn't as fun anymore. I remember watching you guys almost here these guys were the world tag team champions, even though me and Dr. Dredd defeated them in Rochester.
I thought it was Japan.
Whoever it was, but it never happened. We did the match later. And that was only because Jeff wanted the belts right away for some reason, I don't know. But they were the world champions, and then Pretty Boy Taylor and his Ravishing Rusty come in, and they almost have to do a squash match for these guys, and that's what a squash match is where you just are like you're just jobbers, they call them. You're basically just letting them come over, and I thought it was pretty distasteful to have to be in a match like that with somebody like Steve. Pretty Boy Taylor and this Ravishing Rusty, who Steve was telling us all in the locker room, I brought him up from down south. He's a wrestler from down south. I think he was a friend in the bar. I don't know where the guy came from, but I could tell by his wrestling he didn't wrestle down south or anywhere else for that matter. He just looked like he did. And that's when it was not getting fun.
Right.
And that's about the time when I left it. I think you guys left about the same time.
Same time, yeah. We, if you weren't a part of it, we don't want to be a part of it. We didn't have any interest after that. And like you said, it just didn't have any much fun anymore. And that's why we did it, because we were having a blast. Once it became more work than fun, then it isn't worth it.
I don't remember the whole Gary Parr neck breaking thing happening, but we should. When I think about that, I thought we should have done a benefit card for him.
He had a couple benefits, and he was well taken care of by the
Did he?
community. It was, we weren't doing any wrestling at the time, and he was at the beach, and he had, just broke his neck diving into the water, and he was just kind of laid up for about a year, and he's fully recovered now, though, and he's got a family, and he's doing good.
The whole boxing thing didn't surprise. I remember when we were done with the wrestling show, I remember reading in one of the papers. Maybe I got it on the internet. I don't know where it was, but I remember reading about John Hoffman going to state for the Golden Gloves, and I thought, and it didn't surprise me because he used to tell me stories about when you get off the bus. This is back when he first joined. You may even remember telling me this, but he said you used to get off the bus and you didn't like to start fights, but if somebody wanted to fight, you were ready to fight, and he would say how he enjoyed beating these kids up that were bigger or whatever because he knew how to use his fists when he'd get off the bus.
Yeah, I started boxing before wrestling. I had my first boxing match when I was 12, and that's my number one love. It's a ring sport of some sort that's been in my world, but I'm pretty much winding down a 20-year boxing career now, and I've done a lot of good stuff and seen a lot of good places and met a lot of good people, and it's not a whole bunch different than the wrestling world.
It is different. When I was 20, me and a friend, when I went down to Wisconsin, they had 16-ounce gloves, and these are big gloves. And we just, for fun, put the gloves on and went through like 3 rounds, just boxing. I don't know how to box. He didn't either. We just had fun trying, and I'll tell you something. When I was done after 3 rounds, my chest ached, hurting trying to breathe. And I thought to myself, I can't imagine going 8 or 9 rounds in the ring. You got to be in shape and everything. I mean, wrestling, we got to be in shape too, but I don't think to that degree.
Well, you were definitely tough enough. You just didn't, you'd have been all right. You were definitely sacrificed your body for the cause, and you got to do a little bit of that, that's for sure. As far as going, it's just practice and relaxing, just like wrestling. You just play the part and do your thing,
Yeah.
And I tell you, sometimes I don't think it hurts any more or less in some of them wrestling matches.
There's moves that always hurt.
Oh, for sure.
I never liked suplexes. Were one of the ones that I never liked because you never knew how you land a little different, crooked, whatever. You feel it more, and suplexes always. I didn't like that. I didn't like getting slammed off the top rope for the same reason. But
But you still did it.
But out of all the moves, I think the hardest move to learn was the drop kick. It's just hard to get up. In fact, when I was down in Eddie's gym, they had punching bags like this, and I would use punching bags to practice the drop kick. I'd mark a spot and say, I'm going to hit right here, and I'd be landing on pads like this, but then you'd hit it. And it's funny, somebody was telling me the other day, they said, you couldn't still do that drop kick. I said, it's like riding a bike,
Yeah,
really.
right. Just get up and do it.
So I was in my living room with my sisters, and one of this Q, he's a quarterback for St. Cloud. He's like my nephew's friend. He's like 6'3", he's a tall guy, and I had to get way up high to hit him. And I said, they had this air bed out. I thought, well, I can land on this. So stand there, I had him stand there, and I marked where I'm going to hit him. I said, I'm going to hit you right here. And I got up and did that drop kick, and when I landed, this air bed just bottomed right out. It was nothing. And I landed on the floor, and I thought, I thought I broke my hip. But
It's not as easy as it was back then.
It felt a lot more difficult, but I could do the drop kick. I just landing on a wooden floor, basically.
That and being a couple years older, maybe. We don't heal quite as good as we did.
But yeah, you don't forget the moves, but you're older now. And
Just takes a little bit more out of you. I feel the same thing when I crawl in those boxing ropes, for sure.
But you had these guys, the Destructors, had the double stack clothesline.
Yes, that was our finishing. Well, first it was the double suplex to the double stack clothesline. Yep.
I remember the double stack clothesline because
That was
when you watch this August card and they do this, they didn't get to do it in the match, but they do it afterwards because they got disqualified. So they get Cat, it was Tommy Katniss, they get him up and they go, and this metal chair is in the ring. They brought a metal chair and it's like right where he's going to land. I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to do this double stack clothesline. He's going to hit the chair. And he barely missed it.
Oh man, I'd love to see that tape.
And I think it was Ryan that had the chair, or maybe you did, and Katniss was outside the ring and the camera had it perfect and he just boom, right with the chair in his head. And it nailed him.
We were pretty ruthless.
Leslie too, the mystery man. Me and him had a lot of matches. In particular, I worked really well with Leslie, and he just some of my better matches at the Dry Dock were with Leslie because for single matches because we just worked well together and we had a good feud going with the mystery man. I know when he's talking about when I cut my head open, that was because of these. There wasn't a match with these guys.
Yeah, you went off the ring post.
They all went after me with the chair, and the mystery man had orchestrated this with the chair, and I had this big gash. So the next card out, it was a grudge match. I was getting the mystery man back.
Just one-on-one?
Just one-on-one. The Destructors were in the corner, but yeah, and they didn't interfere.
Well, yeah, sometimes a man's got to fight his own fight. Just making sure it was fair. See, we were maybe bad guys, but we were still good.
In the ring, it was different people. The people don't realize is we all got along so well behind that curtain, and for the most part. And there's a few people that kind of played their part outside the ring versus in the ring, but most people just playing a part. And everybody really respected everybody else outside the ring.
And nobody ever tried to hurt anybody else. And
No, it was never about that.
No, we always were as safe as we possibly could be. And I remember you always watching us, work on things and tell us how we can be a little bit better at it or safer at it, and teach us how to, try to fall better. And yeah, we for being young men, we took care of ourselves pretty well. I have to commend us for that.
I mean, the big thing was selling it. You wanted to sell it and make it look good.
Yeah, we didn't want to be smos or smucks out there.
Yeah.
We wanted to look good.
Like backyard wrestling today, they do all this stuff. It's the whole idea is violence and hurting and pain and all that. And those things weren't around with us. I mean, it looked like it was happening, but that was the whole idea. It was almost like a magician when he pulls a rabbit out of the hat and you think, how did he do that? Well, when you see some of the moves we did and you make it look like you took the guy's head off, how did he do that, Not like backyard wrestling today where he does some triple flip off his garage roof, landing on a bunch of fluorescent light bulbs and thumbtacks, It just didn't have that stuff. And I wouldn't want to do that stuff.
Well, it's kind of where wrestling has gone today, even in the higher ranks, and the top of wrestling, And back when we were kids and we watched wrestling, it was a wrestling match. It wasn't a fantastic, supernatural experience. It was a wrestling match, and now it's. Yeah, like you said.
And it used to be exciting. I can remember being in the Civic Center. Hulk Hogan's coming out, and the Eye of the Tiger starts, and it's like this electricity going through the whole building. and you're just ecstatic. And then Hogan comes out, and this is back in the AWA, and everybody thinks he became so popular in the WWF, but I can remember being at those civic centers and thinking, that's Hogan, and that energy in that building was unbelievable. And Hogan's like having to fight his way through the crowd because they're all down there trying to just get a touch on him and working his way to that ring. And they play that music, that Eye of the Tiger, and boy, you just felt it.
That's why we ended up doing what we did, because we were there experiencing that. And yeah, wrestling was a lot different back then. I think I appreciated it a little bit more then than I do now.
Yeah, and we didn't know if it was real or not.
No,
either.
And we didn't care.
And I always was a big thing. That must be real. It's got to be. I'd get in arguments with friends.
I'll bet.
That's real.
I've had the
Wrestling's
same
real. And when it all came out that it wasn't, I remember this 2020 report, and it kind of told the truth. Part of me was disappointed because they were kind of fooled. But then, when I experienced it myself in my own show, when we did do it real, we had title matches that were real for a while. And even though it was, it was fair for the decision, but the match itself was pretty boring. I mean, two guys really trying to wrestle each other to win. It reminded me of a high school wrestling match. And I thought, well, this must be why they don't do them real in the real time, because it would be pretty boring. You can't do all those fun moves and everything, So I just learned from that, That's why we didn't do it real. But, yeah. Not only that, it was friendships were getting hurt, so we had to switch that and start predetermining everything.
It was real. It was just, predetermined and practiced. But yeah, we were doing the real stuff before us. But when we got there, we all tried very hard to make it as real as possible. Just what reality is someone else's opinion or everybody's opinion.
Yeah.
When we were yelling at each other, it was for real, but we were still hanging out afterwards, after the cameras were off. And let's face it, what else could we have done when we were young men like that? We could have been doing a lot of things that wouldn't have brought us the happiness and camaraderie and taught us life lessons like we did when we were working together doing this.
That's so true.